What's up, everybody? It's Aslan Hajavandi and Michael Langston. One of us is in Tallahassee. Maybe both of us are in Tallahassee at a Denny's with a window next to him, or the other one's in Nashville still. Who knows? I just want everybody to know before we start, Michael, that I had such a nice shot framed up in outside the W Hotel in Nashville. We probably would have won an Emmy. We would have probably been
Yeah.
inside the NBA for like best studio show, but they kicked me out. I went on the rooftop of this hotel, no internet. Now we're down in the lobby, which nobody cares about. You're here. Let's talk recruiting on
Yeah.
the Elite Series here in Nashville. I'll be honest, Michael, I'm not the recruiting guy. I asked you and Matt to give me a list of guys
Yeah.
that thought were in the mix for Florida State. And you guys gave me about like 10 guys. And I looked and I was researching all these guys before I came here. And I'm like, man, this is a stretch that maybe even more than like 4 of these guys are really interested in Florida State. But
Right.
I spoke to about 8 of them. You spoke to a ninth, and it seems like I know it's only it's a small part of this thing, but there seems to be a good general vibe around what these kids think about Florida State and Mike Norvell.
Yeah, no doubt. And, a lot of that goes around the product of what they do and then maybe the position they play. They're seeing a lot of development. And, and that's the thing we hear a lot from the kids is development. Heard that a lot when even one guy I interviewed, talked about development. And I think they see that and kind of see where these FSU programs going. Then we heard with one recruit, the transfers don't help them, so in the high school market. So I think overall, you're going to get that mixed stuff when you balance the portal and the in the high school, and I think FSU mainly hovers around that top 10 mark, and I think they could get up higher than that to top 5, but that's just kind of the dilemma they have to face. But as a program in general, yeah, the buzz and excitement is very high with FSU.
Speaking of all these kids, I mean, they're all going to leave Nashville here in the next day or two as you guys are watching this video, and they're going to start going on all their official visits. And June seems to be that month. Talking to other guys that are around here, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but Florida State's got 4 commitments right now for the class of 25.
Right.
4. The Notre Dame guys, like, man, Notre Dame's got 22. So, like, I know we keep telling people, hey, relax, it's going to be okay, but like there's got to be a sense of urgency around this program in the month of June to get these guys on campus and to get some commitments, it feels like.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's been kind of the date they've circled. 23 official visitors on the 21st. 9 and 7 sprinkled in certain weekends, or 8 and 7, and then you have one that's 4, and then this weekend they're hosting a couple. But yeah, there's gonna be movement. I mean, there's expectation that FSU feels like they're gonna land a good portion of commits. I mean, they're definitely going to be highly in the double digits. I definitely think in the summer they're going to get the majority of this class. So whether that's in June, July, August, it's going to happen before the season, in my opinion. So yeah, it is a sense of urgency. It is a sense of this was the time that they've circled that they know we got to get some guys on board, some top guys, and I think they will. I think it's going to be a very active commit list as far as us updating that. So I think, but I agree with you 100% that this is a sense of urgency, that this is the time frame that I've heard that they're really going to hit it.
Let's then talk about the prospects that we spoke to out here in Nashville. And correct me if I'm wrong, as always, Michael. This is your
Yeah.
account recruiting, but I feel like there's 3 tiers of guys. There was one guy who was in a class all to himself when it came to talking about Florida State. There was then
Hmm.
another tier of guys that seem to have a lot of good things to say about Florida State, but obviously there's a lot of other teams that are kind of in the competition for their services. And then to be frank with you, there seem to be a lot of guys that were just kind of lukewarm on Florida State, even though an official visit might be on the horizon. I think for me, it seemed to be far and away Tavon Wallace, which might not be news to a lot of people, but he just seemed to be so over the top about, not over the top, but he was assertive when he said that, Florida State's ahead of him. And that's something you definitely want to hear. You don't want to hear like in the mix tie,
Yeah.
right? You want to hear
Yeah.
he's ahead. And how important of a piece is he for Florida State at linebacker?
Oh, he's pivotal because linebacker recruiting is something we've harped on for the last 2, 3 years. So they already got Ethan Pritchard; he's a 4-star, but they need more. They want 2 more in this class, and certainly to be in the position they are with Tavion is a big deal. They spent a lot of time in this recruitment. This is a kid that's visited multiple times in the spring. This is visited several times, and he said every time when he's there, like, There's a difference with FSU. A lot of it's relationships, which we always harp on of what FSU does, but development with what Randy Shannon does, and then the team in general. I think the product itself is a big deal for Tavon when you look at the teams and what he's looking at with different schools. Florida's in there. Certainly, I would say they made a push. Georgia's made a push, but as far as Florida, yeah, you don't know if the coach is going to be there after this year. So with Florida State, there's stability. That's another area that we heard that with Gavin Nix, another 4-star linebacker, and he's a guy that really harps on that. And I think Tavion's really big on that. So I think that's a lot of those things all to put together. I think has really put them in a good place. And I know Steve Wilfong's already made a pick for FSU. I would probably, if I haven't put one in, I'm probably going to put one soon. So I feel confident about that's a guy that they look good for going into these official visits.
Yeah, man, to hear him talk about, he says Georgia, the local pressure goes in one ear, goes out the other. So he's not going to succumb to that sort of stuff. And, I know there were stories and reporting out there about his father being like a huge Florida Gator fan and the emotion he saw on his father's face when they visited Gainesville, but it seemed to pale into how he felt when it came to talking about Florida State. Now, for that sort of second tier of guy, there's numerous guys. I think Khalil Lockett was a guy that spoke about Florida State where you kind of were like, whoa. I also think Vernell Brown III is a guy that spoke about Florida State that makes you feel really excited about the prospect of him. And then I think maybe Duke Johnson, Darrell Johnson. I know he's committed to Alabama, but he talks about Florida State being on him constantly and him being interested in them still. Those seem to be like that second tier of prospect that have a real interest in Florida State. Do you agree with that, or anybody else to add to maybe that tier?
No, I think that tier's good. I think the guy that jumped out to me is Vernell Brown Jr. That's the one that
The third.
FSU,
Vernell Brown
the third,
III.
third, VB3. You can call him that if you want to, but that's the one that really stood out to me of all the guys you named. I'll go in. I'll give a few note on all two, other two, but I think with Vernell Brown, it's been a one where FSU's been on it so long. Their product of what they do at receiver is really standing out to Vernell. I think he likes what they're doing. As I said, uncertainty with Florida, the coaching staff, that's a big deal. They're coming off a subpar season as well. FSU's coming off. I don't care. I'm not even going to count that last game. Undefeated season, ACC champions. So that stands out a lot. And then in what they've done when they have receivers there, not just high school kids, but portal kids that only were there for like a year. Bam, they're immediately getting development, and I think that stuff is resonating in a big way with Vernal. I think FSU is a major threat for that one. And then the other one's Kalik Lockett. Kalik always like you want to close the door on Kalik, and then he comes out with these quotes like, "Wow, he really said that." There's a comfort level that is extremely strong with FSU, but we know what Texas is doing. They're in the playoff last year. FSU should have been, but they were there anyway. But they've done a lot with their program. There's a lot of excitement. In-state kid. You just feel like he's probably going there or at the very least leaning there. But man, the quotes he says about FSU makes you think like, hey, you know what? There could be a little movement if FSU can nail these official visits. So it's kind of like in that second tier, part. And then, those things kind of just jump out to me. I forget the last one that you mentioned.
Duke Johnson.
Yeah,
Darrell
Duke
Johnson.
Johnson, guy that's mentioned FSU for official visit. I haven't confirmed that he's for sure going to take that official visit. I don't know if he said anything to you when you talked to him, but
He did say he will. He did say he
okay, so
plans to.
he will take an official at some point. So my guess is FSU, because he visited in spring. My guess is FSU wants to wait until the fall. They want him to experience a game because what's the point in a kid that committing to another school that's visiting you in the summer? That's kind of stupid for an official visit. So you want him to experience kind of what you do, what you look like on the field in person. So that's probably why, because originally I think it was June 7th, but now I think FSU switched that up. Probably going to bring him for the Clemson game from what I've heard. So that's kind of smart. Still going to be a tough pool. We don't see a lot of guys flip from Alabama. So that's never easy. But FSU was the leader early in that recruitment. So that's one where you really got to monitor because of what they did early in that recruitment. But as you said, a lot of second tier guys. But the guy that stands out to me is Vernell Brown III.
Yeah, and we're not saying that they're second tier talent. We're just talking about in
Yeah,
terms of like the level of interest in Florida State. It seems like
right,
Tavon Wallace far and above everybody was
right.
really excited to talk about Florida State. Listen, I do want to say that I probably had the opportunity to grab Jamie Ffrench, but in speaking with Matt, he's just like, hey
Yeah,
man, like ask him off camera whether or not Florida State's in
yeah,
the mix before you make him sit down for a one-on-one. And I was
yeah,
just like, hey, and he was getting ready. He was like walking out. I'm like, hey, real quick, sorry, Jamie. I'm like, Florida State still on the radar, and he's like, man, not really. And I know that's not a very encouraging thing, but I don't want to say the door is open, but it seems like I don't know if whatever's maybe gone wrong, quote unquote, between him and Florida State. But if something gets rectified, it didn't seem to be like, oh no, or like, oh that's nah. It wasn't
yeah,
anything like that. So I don't want to leave the door ajar too open for him, but you know the other guys, though, I
yeah.
think, we talk about, I think Isaiah Gibson,
Hmm.
man, I asked him to go ahead and rank his teams, and he ranked 7 teams, and he didn't say Florida State. And he also didn't say Southern Cal, and he showed up in a Southern Cal
Yeah,
sweater. So who knows what to think?
he's a little bit all over the place. First, one quick note on Jamie.
Okay.
Jamie switches a lot. We heard early in the process FSU was the leader. Then it was Ohio State for sure the leader. Then now it's Texas. So I wouldn't just close the door on Jamie because the season could start. He could see the excitement with FSU. They could get an official later in the fall. That's why I don't think FSU's pushing for an official visit until probably later in the fall. Now that could develop. Definitely comes off as kind of a NIL, very popular in him. So nothing wrong with that. Everyone has a different preference of what they want. So that will be interesting to see if that how that changes or fluctuates throughout the process. And then with Isaiah Gibson, the note I heard, Aslan, which is interesting, is his dad has attended a lot of FSU home games, a lot.
Mm.
So he goes to a lot of the home games. So I think there's a personal attraction to FSU, and then of course what they do with defensive linemen. So that's another one that a lot of these, we're saying second tier because of mutual interest one way or the other, but a lot of these recruitments are ones where I feel like are going to heat up once we see the season and start seeing them game. Because you got to remember, FSU plays Clemson and Florida at home, so that's going to be a popular venue. Win those big games, I think you could see some movement with a lot of these guys that we're talking about. They're kind of interested or lukewarm interest, but that could adjust. But there's some really cool stories already from a lot of these kids.
The note on Gibson that should be kind of noted. Note the note, everybody. Way to go, Aslan. Gibson did say he's going to be taking his officials during the season. I think he mentioned Florida State
Yeah,
wants to get him on campus for the Clemson game.
yeah,
So it's important for him to see how these seasons for some of these teams
yeah,
play out. Other guys, I think CJ Pickett said, like, man, I'm going to be locked in. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
But when you hear some of these guys talk about Florida and they want to get their commitment done before their senior season starts, you're like,
Hmm.
man, there's no way mom and dad can let you commit to Florida. I
Yeah,
mean, I get it. The program's a program and not so much the head coach, but guys like Gibson that are going to push it further along into the season.
right.
Let's see if Southern Cal doesn't have a great year or if something happens with Georgia unexpectedly, and then maybe if Florida State can kind of sneak up there.
Yeah, I just think it's pointless if a kid's committed to another school for FSU, because we cover FSU for a kid to visit any other time but during the season. That just makes no sense to me to officially visit a school that you already committed somewhere else. So it's not a lot's going to change from that summer official visit. So I think a lot of these you'll see a lot of these guys during the season officially visit FSU, and there's certainly going to be a lot of different storylines. I told people before the season, like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of summer commits, but there's also going to be a lot of decommits this year because a lot of kids are going to see seasons and it's going to change their mind. So it's just what we follow, but a lot of it. I mean, the DJ Pickett interview. You guys wait till you see that. It's really interesting. Some of the stuff he says. It's intriguing, both positive and kind of probably negative because of what FSU does in the portal. But I think overall, I'm loving these interviews.
Okay. Just to run through the list, Marion Dye, I think, was a late arriver, so we were not able to grab him while we were
Okay.
there. Jamie Ffrench, probably not everybody. Ty Haywood,
Yep.
I don't think he was able to arrive due to weather out in
Okay.
Texas. Ty Jackson, you spoke to Ty Jackson.
Yes.
What were your takeaways on that one?
My takeaway is he really doesn't know which way he feels as far as what team stands out. I think Penn State, Florida State, I think Florida, those teams are ones that I've heard consistently with him. So that kind of pinpoint. You could tell he's very cautious of how he answered certain things. I will say this, that with Ty, I think winning production on the field, not as much of a major deal with him compared to what a school does with development, or what a school or how he feels when he's there. So I think feeling and development are two things that are really big, I think, to Ty. And then the other Ty, you mentioned Ty Haywood. He visited FSU in the spring. He's visiting on that 21st weekend, the big one. So I think that's a guy to keep a slight eye on, because I think FSU's done a lot of good things there. We've seen the surge they made with five-star offensive lineman Josh Petty. I think they're the favorite and looking good there. So Haywood could be a guy that you also keep an eye on for FSU. They're swinging, man. They're getting up there. They're cutting. They're not taking pitches. They're going there and they're swinging and they're going for the big dogs. And they want this offensive line class to be a special one.
Okay, so we didn't speak to Dye. Ffrench, probably not. Haywood, we didn't speak to. Ty Jackson feels like a soft maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Duke Johnson feels like a strong maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Khalil Lockett, I'll say soft maybe. DJ
Mm-hmm.
Pickett, no. Tavon Wallace is a yes. Like he's
Yeah.
a yes. We didn't get to catch up with Dallas Wilson. I don't think he showed up or not.
Okay.
Jadon Blair is a soft maybe.
Yeah.
We can talk about him maybe real quick on the way out. Didn't get to speak to Caleb Cunningham. He did not arrive at all. Vernell Brown, the third, to me that's a hard maybe. CJ Wiley to me is a no, but he's just a tough guy to read. And to me, Isaiah Gibson's kind of a no. Okay. And when you talk about, only 50 kids are here and how many you're going to get, I guess from there, as we kind of wind things down, Michael, were you surprised when you think about the 50 top guys in this class? Was this about the right amount of number of players that should be interested in Florida State, or is it time now for Florida State that's put together 2 great seasons and has a strong NIL backing? They should have more than really maybe like 5 guys I either said yes or like strong maybe to.
No, I think the 9 or 10 that we pinpointed that, when I sent to Aslan, like, hey, these are the guys, I felt good that, hey, that's a good group of guys, because there's no guarantee that the guys you're wanting to talk to are going to be there. For FSU, they got their guys there, and I was surprised. A little surprises about some of them, just what they said of how much they liked FSU compared to. There's probably just a little bit higher than what I thought. I think any kid that's on there that's a maybe is going to be a factor with FSU, as long as they're planning on visiting FSU. And that's kind of my take on a lot of it. Even guys that are set official visits like Ty Jackson and Ty Haywood and those guys. But the DJ Pickett's, that probably is going to be a hard one to win because of portal stuff. But he really likes Surtain. I mean, you guys wait till you see the interview Aslan did. He really highlights Surtain, talking about, but is that enough to overturn the transfer portal stuff? I'd say probably no. But a lot of these, I think it did exactly as on kind of what I expected of the talent that was there. I knew Tavon would say a lot of great things about FSU. I knew a lot of different other guys that you talked to. They would say good things about FSU. So I think very productive, but good. And I think it's a really good experience for a lot of these kids to, we haven't even talked about that, to learn about NIL and how it works, because a lot of these guys don't understand how it works or what it factors in. And despite what fans think, it's not like on the top of the mind of a kid in high school compared to a kid in the portal.
Yeah, no, a lot of the kids, when I ask them about NIL, I ask them all, not all, but most of them, I'm like, do you want to be involved in that conversation, or do you just tell the coaches, hey, talk to my mom and dad, they'll handle it? And most of them are like, yeah, I have them talk to my parents. Like, I don't, it's part of the thing, but like, I don't want people to think that it's an important thing for me, because it isn't. Only one of the guys was like, yeah, I want to be involved.
Yeah.
So shout out to him. And then our guy Jadon, he had a good answer just about like, he's like, I kind of want to know, because he's like, if you say $60,000, that's not enough for a guy like me. And I'm like, my man.
Whoa, there you go.
Man.
Get you
So,
paid.
yeah,
Get you some name, likeness, image.
yeah. So Tuesday was media day for all of us to speak to them from all of the On3 sites, and then
Mhm.
Wednesday they'll go through like a bunch of seminars and
Right.
lectures and educational talks. So On3 will be reporting on that stuff, which will be available on
Yeah.
warchant.com because we're part of the On3 network. And when you subscribe, you get all the stuff that Michael tells you on the PRB. You don't have to wait for this video and go through
Yep.
20 minutes of it. You get all that. You get everything from Ira and Corey, Gene Williams, Tom Lang, Jeff Cameron, myself every now and then. So go subscribe to warchant.com, everybody. That's what we're trying to tell you. It's only $1 for like a month. Figure it out. Michael's going to be working hard. He's got a busy weekend coming up as well. Michael will keep us posted over on the PRB. I'm going to go have dinner, Michael, if you don't mind. So
Okay.
thanks for hanging out. He's
Of
Michael
course.
Langston. I'm Aslan Hujavandi. Hit the thumbs up on the way out. We certainly would appreciate it. Thanks for watching this edition of Warchant TV.